Jack here, owner of Hockey Alley, bringing you back hockey history. Today I got NHL legend Garry Unger, who played with the St. Louis Blues. He held the Ironman streak for 915 games. I'm going to ask him a little bit about when he played with the Toronto Maple Leafs before that, and also when he played with the Oilers, and how he prepared for those 915 games. Let's see how it goes. Hi, Garry. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I want to thank you for coming on and talking to me on my channel. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah. So you started out your career in the NHL with the Toronto Maple Leafs in was 67, 68, correct?
Yeah, that was my first NHL team. Yeah.
Was that the year they won the cup, or was that the year after?
That's the year after. Back then there was no draft.
Okay.
If you lived in a certain place in Canada, you belonged to a certain team. And I lived in Calgary, and I belonged to the Leafs. So they got me. I was playing junior hockey in Calgary for the Calgary Buffaloes, the Alberta Junior Hockey League, and they called and asked if I wanted to come and try out for the Toronto Marlboros. Mm-hmm. So I went out to Toronto to try out with the Marlboros. They pretty well had their team picked. It was a pretty hot team, mm-hmm. One of the best in Canada, and I wanted to find out if I was any good. Anyhow, that's when they ended up sending me to London, Ontario. Mm-hmm. In London that year was my first year in the OHA. We called the OHA then, Ontario Junior Hockey League. And then I played that year in London. In London.
Yes.
And then at the end of the season, they sent me down to Rochester, and I actually went to Rochester.
The American League.
I was in their organization from that time on.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever play with Don Cherry?
He was the captain of Rochester.
How was he on the team as far as...
He was a good guy.
Good guy.
Back then, there was only 6 teams.
Uh-huh.
Team had 2 farm clubs. The older guys went to the American League, and the younger guys went to the Central Club. And Toronto owned Rochester American for the American League and Tulsa Oilers for the Central League.
Wow, it's very different than now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot more teams now.
Yeah. And then you played for Toronto, and you had Tim Horton on your team. How was he as a teammate and player?
Well, they were all guys. That era of guys, mm-hmm. Call that the Gordie Howe era. I was really lucky to play with all those guys, George Armstrong, and Tim Horton, and Larry Hillman, Johnny Bauer was in net. There was a lot of young kids come in the Toronto organization as well. Wayne Carlton, Mike Walton. Mm-hmm. Let me think of some of the other older guys. Well, he on the team. All the old leaders were on the team. They had won the cup. I wasn't with them for the full year. I think that year after I played in London and went to Rochester with the American League for playoffs. I came to training camp next year. They signed me over the summer. Mm-hmm. So when I signed a Toronto contract, and I actually hurt my knee before training camp, and I missed training camp. Went to the hospital, had my heart rate taken.
Oh. And
so then when I came back and spent some time with Toronto, then I went to Tulsa, and I went where else? So I go back to Rochester, and then I separated my shoulder in Houston. And in February, they said, you might as well come back to Toronto, get all the doctors to look at you. You're all beat up and we'll get you ready for next year. So they brought me back to Toronto in February. I spent a couple of weeks there, and all of a sudden I'm back in the lineup, which means on the bench for the Leafs. I wasn't playing very much. And I came to practice one day, and all of a sudden there's a whole pile of cameras there. They said that I had just got tricked.
Wow. And then you went to Detroit, so you played with Gordie Howe also, which is awesome.
Well, I also played on the line with Gordy. When I
Wow, that's cool.
when,
And
when
uh,
I left, I met the team in New York, and when I went to the dressing room, the lines were up on the chalkboard, and I was playing center between Gordie Howe and Frank Mahovlich.
wow,
That
that's
was my line.
awesome. And
Yeah.
Frank Mahovlich was your teammate in Toronto also.
Yes, he was
Oh,
my team. Pete Stemkowski was my roommate in Detroit. He got traded with us,
uh-huh.
with me, and who else was there? Jimmy Pappin was there. Uh, oh man, it's amazing. I can't remember all these guys, but they were all the main guys in the Toronto organization.
Yeah. And then you had also, how was it to play for Punch Imlach? How was he as a
Well,
coach?
Punch was an old school, hard nosed coach that it was his way or the highway kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Guys didn't get along very well. That's why they traded Frank Mahovlich, because him and Punch weren't getting along.
Mm-hmm.
And I got thrown into the trade with Frank and Pete Stemkowski. Carl Brewer was in that trade as well.
Wow.
Carl spent some time over in Helsinki. I know you're from Sweden, so
Yes.
I ended up doing some hockey schools in Finland with Carl.
Oh, cool.
After that, and Carl actually came to St. Louis with me when I got traded there.
Wow.
So it was pretty exciting for me. It was a break in my life to get traded from Toronto to Detroit, because when I got traded to Detroit, I was just basically sitting on the bench with the Leafs. And when I got traded to Detroit, they were already mathematically out of the playoffs.
Uh-huh.
So they didn't have to lose by throwing me into the lineup. And that's why they put me with Gordie and Frank. And I ended up getting 15 assists and 5 goals in the last 15 games. And all of a sudden, the next year when I came to Detroit's training camp, I had number 7 and I was on the team.
Awesome. And then you had 42 goals in your third year with Detroit, which is incredible. That's really good.
The first year that I played with Toronto, the next year, or with Detroit, my rookie year, I ended up with 24.
Yeah.
But I was in the lineup all the time and played, and never missed a shift and all those things. And then the next year is the big year that I had with 42 goals.
And you also had many consecutive 30-plus goal seasons when you went to St. Louis. So that's where you had...
You wonder sometimes what kind of a player you're going to be, because there's 50 goal scorers that were playing junior hockey in the OHA and the Quebec Junior League and the Western League and all that stuff, and they come to the NHL and all of a sudden they're on the third line checking line. So I didn't know. I guess I was a natural goal scorer, and I jumped in with Detroit and loved it there. Gordie was unbelievable. Alex Delvecchio was another great guy. The team was a whole group of Hall of Fame guys.
Yeah.
Bill Gadsby was coaching, and all these names that I watched as a kid. So it was pretty exciting for me to be in Detroit, and I wasn't too excited when I got traded from Detroit, because I really enjoyed it there. But again, destiny calls, and it was great for me to get traded to St. Louis as well, because all of a sudden Red Berenson was their number one guy, and I got traded for their number one guy, so I needed to replace him.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I have a natural goal scoring ability to score goals. So
yeah.
Goal scorers shoot the puck and hit the post and it goes in, and a non-goal scorer makes the same shot and hits the post and goes out. So go in somehow. I don't know.
Do you think chemistry with line mates makes a difference, or the coach giving you ice time and playing you and putting you on the power play? Which one do you think is more effective for you when you? Well,
obviously you need guys to help you on the ice. Mm-hmm. I think the defense is really a major development piece of that, of scoring goals, because they move the puck to you. I never played longer than maybe a month or so with the same guys. You you get thrown over all over different guys. The next year that I came to Detroit, and I think this must have been the year I scored 42 goals because I started off with Gordy and Frank again.
Mm-hmm.
At Christmas time, Alex Del Vecchio had a whole stack of assists, but he had 0 goals at Christmas time.
Wow.
So Sid Abel came to me and they said, "Listen, Gary, we're going to have to get Alex going here for the playoffs." He said, "We're going to stick Alex back with Gordy and Frank, and you go play with." I think I played with Nick Libet, and there was a bunch of other different guys that I played with in Detroit, but I never really had. I would have liked to have had Yeri Curry and Gretzky, or Brett Hall, or the French Connect line, or the Gag line in New York. I would have loved to have had 2 guys that we really clicked.
Yeah.
And got to know each other. The one guy that I really did get to know really well was a guy named Mike Murphy, who got traded from the Rangers to us, and I really had a chemistry with him. Jack Eagers was my other winger. Hmm. He was a heavy goal, a slap shot guy, and was a good player. Yeah. So that particular line, I think, was the longest I've ever played with two guys without getting changed around. So a lot of my stuff, a lot of times when I would go down on a 2-on-1, I'd have to look over and see who I was giving the puck to, because a lot of times when I first started playing in St. Louis, I wasn't sure if I gave it to that guy whether he was going to do anything with it or whether I'd ever get it back. Yeah. So sometimes I had more goals than I did assists.
That's awesome. And you had an NHL record for a long time. It was 915 consecutive games, which is sorry?
914.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. 914. I want to ask you, so when did you realize that there was going to be a record? Was it after like 500 consecutive games, or you didn't think about it?
I never thought about it, but we were playing in Long Island. We just got beat by the Islanders. We needed the points, and so it was kind of an important game for us. So everybody was upset that we lost the game. It was on the road. And a reporter came up to me after the game and said, "Congratulations." And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "We just got beat." And he said, No. He said, "You just played your 500th game."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, I've been around for a while. I guess I played 500 games." He said, "No, 500 games in a row." And I said, "Well, that's news to me." All I wanted to do was play.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I ever heard anything about that. So from that time on, it became an issue when newspaper reporters were doing stuff and all that stuff. Because the record at that time was 630.
Uh-huh.
Andy Hibbenton I was still 130 games away from the record at 500. So it wasn't really close to that time. So, but there was many times that I could have sat out of the lineup and not played. So me not knowing that it was an Ironman streak, I never played for the Ironman streak. I played because I didn't want to miss any games. Mm-hmm. So the motivation behind that was I had a sister that was 5 years younger than me that was crippled. She had polio, and her legs never developed. So she was in a wheelchair and on crutches her whole life. And it was really hard for me. She motivated me with her attitude and how happy she was. And she was a strong Christian girl and was a swimmer. And it was hard for me to feel sorry for myself when she could never ever get out of a wheelchair. Yeah. So it gave me a lot of motivation to not feel sorry for myself and get a little bit of an injury and say, I'm not going to play tonight. So it was all the way through my schooling. Like I never missed any days of school, just because I think mentally, if you have an injury, there's a difference between being injured and being hurt.
Yeah.
If you're injured, maybe have a broken leg or you have something that you can't play with. You're just not going to play. But every player that plays the game in every level at every major sport is injured or is hurt with something. They got an ice pack on their shoulder or their wrist or their knee or whatever. So that was just part of the game. But I never liked to miss any games. But early in the career when I was with obviously, I guess the streak started in Toronto just before I got traded to Detroit. But I had some things going on in Detroit that could have kept me out of the lineup. I came to practice one day. Sid Abel, I think, was coaching, and we were on our way to Boston. And they said, "We've got a new play that we're going to use. The center iceman is going to hide behind the net, and he's going and the other team's going to forget about him. So we're going to dump the puck into their end. They're going to play 5-on-4 down there. When they get the puck, they come out. If they dump it in, you'll already be there. You'll be hiding behind the net. You'll get the puck and you'll dump it out." So we were practicing this before we were on our way to Boston. And Alex Delvecchio was the first guy to be the centerman that hit behind the net. He did it, and then it was my turn. So I hit behind the net, and all of a sudden a guy named Ronnie Harris, who was a big, solid guy, more of a defensive forward and a defenseman as well, wasn't really noted for goal scoring. Somehow he got a breakaway in this scrimmage that we had. He had his head down, and I'm hiding behind the net, and I'm thinking, well, I don't see anybody coming to get him. I can't stay here. He's got a breakaway. So I came out from behind the net when he was just winding up for a slap shot. He didn't even know I was there. I poked the puck off his stick, and he followed through with his slap shot and hit me in the head and cut 17 stitches across the eye.
Oh, man.
So I got him all stitched up and had a black eye and couldn't see out of that eye. We had ice on it. We went to Boston. We didn't play till the next day. I still couldn't see out of my eye. It was so swollen. He really whacked me good. And then we go to practice. Then we go to the game. So I go to Boston Gardens. We're in the dressing room. I'm getting dressed. And Lefty Wilson, the trainer, says, "Hey, the doctor and the coach wants to see you in the other room." So I go in the other room, and the doctor says to me, "How you feeling?" I said, "I'm good." He said, "Can you see out of that eye?" I said, "Sure, I can see." He said, "Okay, you can play."
That was it.
So I played that whole game not being able to see out of my side, and I kept getting blindsided. But, that was a game was pretty easy to say, well, I'm not going to play. I can't see.
Yeah.
But that wasn't because of the streak. So, but again, like I say, lots of little things like that you played through, you got taped. And when I played in St. Louis, Tommy Woodcock was our trainer in St. Louis. I was always really close with the trainers. I really enjoyed those guys. And if you wanted to know anything about the team, the trainers were the guys to talk to.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I got real close with Tommy Woodcock. So, and he was an unbelievable taper. He could tape a groin or a knee or a shoulder or whatever you needed taped. Because I would never take any freezing or anything like that. I didn't take many pain pills. I didn't like the pain stuff. So pain is kind of nature's way of saying don't move that any farther than that. So whenever I got an injury at St. Louis, Tommy would take care of me. And it went all the way down, and again, these were games that there wasn't even a mention of an Ironman streak. I just didn't want to miss any games.
Yeah.
So he got me through those games. And then the one time we were probably into the streakaways. This maybe after the Islander deal where I found out there was 500 games. And it became a streak, not just for me, but it became a streak for Tommy Woodcock and the St. Louis Blues and my sister and my mother. Everybody was following this thing because a lot of the write-ups were about my sister in her wheelchair, and that I got so much inspiration from her. So anyhow, I got hit. I was wearing Bauer skates, leather skates, and I stopped a slap shot on the outside of my foot and cracked I had a cracked bone in my foot. and I couldn't put a skate on. And we had about 4 days before we played again. And Tommy made a call to Montreal, and there was a ski boot company called Lang Ski Boots. It just started making skates, and they were plastic skates with an insole and an insert.
Yes.
So Tommy called and got me a pair of plastic skates, and Saturday morning, game skate. We put the skates on, and I went out and skated, and I said, I can use these things. So I skated with my broken foot.
Wow.
So, and that wore those plastic skates for the last part of my career because they were a little bit more protective. So
I remember you having those on. I remember seeing those.
Had where you played through and you got taped and you and by this time I'm playing through everything I can, and that's how the streak went.
Wow, amazing. And you also played with St. Louis when you went to the finals against Boston in '72. How was that experience?
I wasn't there yet.
Oh, you weren't?
No, 72. Yeah, I was there.
Oh, no, sorry. 1970 was when Orr scored the famous goal. Yeah. You weren't there yet, right?
I got traded February '71.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that you just missed that.
That was the year before I got there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And did you do anything different than other players? Because back then, hockey was rough. And did you have any other tactics that you survived that long without, injuries? Knock on wood, no injuries. What did you do different?
Well, I played hockey in Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not tough in Alberta, you're not going to last very long.
Oh.
Because I was the goal scorer and I was the gunner. So every team on the other side would sit in the dressing room and say, if we kill that guy, we're going to win the game because he's going to be scoring goals for them. So I learned to take care of myself. I knew how to fight. I boxed, and my dad was in the Army, and he was a tough guy. And he showed me how to be tough. And I think I had a pretty high pain tolerance. Our Unger line of men were tough guys. Mm-hmm. And I learned how to fight. I learned how to fight in junior, and I knew how to take care of myself. So when I first got into the league, I said to myself, I'm going to have to fight one guy on every team. So these mm-hmm. guys know that I'm going to fight, and it'll give me some room. I also knew how to use stick, and I knew how to use it well without getting caught, without taking stupid penalties, and I could protect myself. And before long, guys knew that I was tough enough that they left me alone.
Yeah, a smart way to do it.
Yeah.
And then you went end of your career. You went to the Edmonton Oilers during the years of Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Paul Coffey, and you had Glenn Sather as your coach. How was that experience?
Well, I knew Glenn since I was 16 years old.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Glenn was in with the Bruins. When Glenn was with the Bruins, somehow he's from Alberta as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up in Banff. And that was a place we all kind of congregated in the summertime. And he started a hockey school in Banff. Mm-hmm. And I was still in junior hockey in Calgary. And he was looking around for guys to work his hockey school. So we met way back then with some of the mountain guys in Banff. And I'm still good friends with all of those guys. And that's how I got back to Edmonton, because Glenn was the general manager of the team. I made 2 stops before that. I went from St. Louis to Atlanta, mm-hmm. the Atlanta Flames. Yes. And then I spent a half a year in LA, and then I got traded back to Edmonton. So, like I say, I knew Glenn forever, and he found out that I would be interested in coming back to Edmonton. He wasn't allowed to talk to me because it would have been tampering. So there was other ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, he got me back to Edmonton with those guys. It was the year Edmonton was really struggling to get into the playoffs. They were right at the bottom line for getting in the playoffs. They needed to win some games at the end of the season, which they did. I came at the trading deadline, so I only played, I think, 10 games with them at the end of the season. But then that was just the year that they knocked Montreal out in the first round.
Oh, yeah.
I think Andy Moog was in net. Grant Fuhr got hurt. Andy Moog was in net. We knocked Montreal out. And we went to Chicago. They went quite a ways in the playoffs.
I think they went to the second round that year.
Second round?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember who beat us out. Anyhow, the next year is the year that they went all the way to play the Islanders in the finals, and the Islanders beat them.
Yes.
But it was a really neat experience for me. I wish I had been younger and more at the top of my game. It was before all the information came out about all the different teams didn't have masseuses and personal trainers and all the food nutrition and all that stuff. We just played, and these guys were all young enough. Glennie Anderson was there, and Mark Messier. I played on a line. I played center. Mark Messier used to be a left winger. I played center between Mark Messier and Glennie Anderson for a while.
Wow.
I played with Gretzky. I played on the left side with Gretzky for a little bit. Glenn was great at moving guys all over the place.
Yeah. And
fun for me.
And you witnessed the 92 goals record breaker in one season. Were you there that game that it happened when he had 92 goals, or he was breaking the record?
In Buffalo?
The one in Buffalo, he broke Esposito's record. Were you there for that game? Were you playing in that one?
Yeah, I was in that. I played in that one. That was the year that they were doing some kind of a movie with Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn. They were in the dressing room in Buffalo. I went through all that stuff with Gretz. I think that was the year he scored 5 goals a game in 5 games. 5 separate games.
Was it? They also had the 50 goals in 39 games. Were you there for that?
Yeah,
wow.
I was there for.
Wow. You lived history. That's awesome. Wow.
Interesting, that guy. But I got to be really good friends with Andy Moog. I still keep in touch with Andy Moog. And he lives in Dallas, and his wife and my wife are really close. I still talk to Glenn all the time.
Oh, nice.
He lives in Banff, and we spend time in the summer. I got him. He always liked horses, so what we used to do in the summertime is go back to Banff, and I raised quarter horses in St. Louis when I lived there. I lived on a ranch. I bought them, and I would bring my horses to Banff in the summertime. We'd have an NHL ride where guys would all come in, and we'd go on a ride for probably a week and go fishing and hack around the mountain. So I've done a lot of stuff with Glenn.
That's awesome. Sounds fun. Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Garry, I can't thank you enough for all the great stories. It's an honor to talk to you. Thank you for coming on and talking to me on my channel.
Not a problem. One time I was blessed with some kind of a hockey interest and enjoyed playing.
Yeah. It's always fun. Hockey's a great sport, brings people together. It's amazing what I see the hockey players getting together now that were enemies back in the day, and they're playing hockey together on the same team. It's like for alumni. I just never thought that I would ever see that.
Well, hockey got, you play on so many different teams, and you get to know these guys, even playing against them.
Yeah.
In our era, I don't know what it's like nowadays, and I'm hoping that that's the same. But we had a lot of respect for each other. I mean, even though there was fights that came, and we fought guys, and we fought friends, and we fought teammates, and we fought in practice, and, all those things went on. But there was never any grudges held, and there was never any, not being friends in the summertime or after the game or whenever. So Hockey players are a pretty special breed.
Yes, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy your day, and we'll talk again.
Yeah, sounds good.
You got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great day.